Today on Detroit Muscle, I find another gem to surprise Mark. Then we'll take this clapped out hearse for a spin down the 8th mile, get it back in the shop so we can transform this hauler into a mauler, adding some performance upgrades to make it scream down the track. Well, it's time for us to kick off another build. On this next project, I had to do a bit of some soul searching. That's okay. The question is, do we do Ford, Mopar, or even a GM? What I have up my sleeve, a few of you guys may have a bit of some cold feet to ride in one. I wanted something just to have some fun with it, and I wanted it to have a big power plant, because you know the old saying, there's no replacement for displacement. Plus, it needed to get noticed. With the name Detroit Muscle, picking what I like to call a top shelf muscle car is usually a no-brainer. Kind of like a '69 Charger. Who doesn't like one of those? Some people consider them the sexiest Mopar ever, with its smooth and flowing Coke bottle lines, a roof line that screams speed, an aggressive grille with those hideaway headlights, plus a handful of that iconic pistol grip shifter that's just begging for a person to run through the gears. Or maybe what you're looking for needs to be a little bit more refined. A Chevelle with plenty of power under the hood would definitely be a great choice. It's got to have those cool racing stripes and a stance that lets everyone know that you mean business while wearing a classy bow tie. But those are expensive. What I'm digging on won't cost you your life savings, will definitely get you some attention, and normally people are dying to take a ride. A hearse, I wouldn't say it's for everybody. There's a lot of people out there that's kind of creeped out by them because we all know what they have a purpose to do. But is that like my old man used to say, it ain't the dead ones you got to worry about, it's the live ones. And when we're done with this thing, it's going to have plenty more life in it than it's got right now. There's not a whole lot of aftermarket support for it, but there are a few items that you can kind of put together, kind of a secret recipe, and make this thing really a powerhouse. Now, the transmission in this thing is just a standard old 400 turbo, and you can doctor on them things on the cheap as well to make it be a performer. Now, I know from where you're probably sitting, this thing ain't a whole lot to look at, but one thing I really like about it is, love them or hate them, you know exactly what this car is. It's highly recognizable, to say the least. And yeah, I know it's got a lot of size to it, and with that, it's a heavy car, and you'll probably notice that as I drive this thing along. Each bump it goes over, it almost kind of bulldozes it down. It just kind of goes across it. You'll see the car not shake much, but the wheels will bounce around. And how could you not like it? I mean, one, it's a Cadillac, you know? I know this car isn't much of a driving car, it's far more of a riding type of car, but you know, that's okay too. Now with this thing, it isn't going to win any races per se because of speed, but it's ate up with cool factor. It is definitely a cruiser. I mean, you can just lay back, ride in it. There's plenty of room, heck, even if you wanted to lay down. I know that overland thing is kind of a big deal. You can camp out with a small family in this thing, have room to play racquetball, hide and go seek, whatever you want. Tell you one thing you ain't gonna do a whole lot of though, and that's past the fuel station. There's some buzzards flying around. I don't know if they can sense this thing coming down the road or not. Sure. We may have to shampoo the carpet, at least pull it out. It stinks in here. I know nothing died in it or nothing like that, but it does stink, kind of musky. The windows are down. I'm really curious of what Mark's words are going to be about this thing. I don't know if he's going to love it or hate it. I know the first time I threw a curveball at him with that Crown Victoria, he wasn't all about it at all. But after getting it finished, well, I guess you could say he enjoyed himself. I know I sure did. And either way, if he don't, I had enough fun for both of us. But I'm sure he's gonna like it. I didn't say love it, I said like it. There is kind of this vibe that comes along with it. A lot of people like these things, you know, one time of the year. Around Halloween, it's kind of a prop. Me, myself, I've owned a couple of these things, and yeah, I know they're not really nothing to brag about in the stock form, but whenever we're all said and done with this thing, I would definitely be proud to have it in my driveway. Just like size matters, so does weight. And this old big thing, well, to say it's heavy is an understatement. So I'm probably gonna have to put it on a pretty serious diet and try to chunk out some of this thing to lighten it up a bit. I don't know exactly what this thing weighs, but we're gonna swing by and put this thing on a set of scales just to see what the number really is. And I'm gonna guess it's probably 7,500 pounds. Well, we're gonna put this thing up on the scales, and I bet it's gonna weigh basically like 2 Challengers, probably 3 Vegas, probably 2.5 Mustangs. It's gonna be heavy regardless. Got the light, need to move on up. Go grab my ticket. Ah, it's better than I thought. 63.40. That ain't bad. Time to go further. That kind of makes me a little more excited. Well, I guess that all depends on how slow it is on the drag strip. I surprised Mark with our new Caddy, and we'll see how fast 3 tons of fun can get down the drag strip.
I'm down here at US 43 Dragway. Tommy told me he was gonna meet me here. He's got a big surprise for me. I'm thinking it's a new project car, and I'm hoping it's this one right here, 61 Falcon 2-door sedan. I actually had a car very similar to this. Same year, same body. It wasn't this nice though, it was kind of a project, and Tommy knows I love Fords and I love Falcons, and I wish I hadn't sold that one, so I'm hoping this is his big surprise for me, but there's only one more.
Surprise, boss man. Check out what I got a killer deal on.
I'm laughing just because I don't know what else to do.
You gotta love it. I mean, this is an excellent opportunity for you to make wise jokes. Something as beautiful as this thing.
I just don't know what to say right now. I'll think of some.
I mean, it should leave you speechless.
Why did you? Why?
Think about it.
Just think about that and answer me later.
Okay.
Why?
Let's see what it do out there. You wanna ride? Well, can't ride. They don't put seat belts in pine boxes. Man, I hope them people from the stands can hear the cam in that dude. And by cam, I mean it's probably just needs to tune up. The choke's about half stopped up. Whew. I'm for sure on one thing, and that is this run down the track is not gonna be impressive at all. No, sir. What that means, it just gives us plenty of room for improvement.
You know, I really thought this was a joke at first. And even though he's serious, it's still a joke.
And one thing's for sure, I sure hope I impressed Mark.
I guess I should just embrace it. Because there's no way you're gonna make this car fast. I don't care what you do to it. It's gotta weigh 7,500 pounds.
Oh, the track's sticky. This old girl's probably gonna make fun of herself. Uh-oh. We're gonna roll up here.
Don't choke!
I don't want to kill it. Here we go. Oh, we red lighted.
I gotta think of something funny to tell him when he gets back.
Woo, we're cooking. Oh, we can get better than that. It's shifted.
It's actually a little quicker than I thought it was gonna be. I know the thing's got a 500 in it. It's got to.
Shoo, I bet on that run they could put a commercial on it. I'm glad there's nobody in that right lane either, because I'm probably gonna need both lanes to turn this big son of a gun around. Now I know that wasn't all that impressive, but You know, this thing's got that big old quadrijet under the hood. If you would, take the air cleaner off, because I think it's choking it and could be killing me.
Oh, I can't tell if you're serious.
No, I'm serious. Go ahead and get that off it. That's cheap power. Don't scratch your paint. Don't worry, I ain't gonna rev it up, it'd scare you.
You wanna leave it out here so it doesn't weigh you down?
Yeah, we probably second or so right there. Oh, I can tell it's better. Woo! Man, that quadrijet's squalling. That's still not impressive. Sounded better though.
Wow, that's quicker than I thought it was gonna be and ran smooth. I got high hopes for it.
You know, I have to say, it wasn't the fastest, but just like a Cadillac, this old thing is plenty smooth and stylish. I don't know if that air cleaner was that restrictive or just weighed that much.
I think it was that restrictive because it sounded a lot different. It was, what'd you run?
It's not impressive. We don't need to talk about it.
That's all right.
Yeah,
I was gonna say, well, whatever it was, can I just tell you what I was gonna say?
yeah.
That number would be impressive if this was a quarter mile.
I've already said this all that too. One last run. No, the slower you went, the longer the slip.
Made you pit way out here? They were that embarrassed?
No, they just said park out here close to the daisies, and I thought this is what they meant.
So are we gonna come up with a project name or what?
We're gonna have to come up with something, and it can be plenty of syllables and all that stuff.
I'm embracing it.
Yeah, dude, you should. I mean, this car is something to be dealt with.
So we got better place, but it's not a place. How about dead weight?
Ain't too bad.
Wait.
Ain't too bad.
The Overtaker.
People will recognize that for sure, buddy.
You got one?
An Overtaker?
Project name.
No, that works for me. I tell you, I'm just about speechless because I'm ready to dive into this thing.
Yeah.
Rip it apart and come back and play with it. I have to say, this is the funnest car I've drove down the track.
Okay.
It ain't the fastest, it's the smoothest, but...
Well, I can't wait to see what you're brewing up.
Dude, it's gonna be awesome.
See you at the shop.
You sure you don't want to ride? I got room for you. Doo, 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 doo. And she cranks right up. Look at this, bumper key. Don't hate that.
To make it fast, we'll need to shed some weight, beginning with the drivetrain. We start tearing into our Caddy Hearse.
I bet a few of you all are thinking I've done lost my mind dragging this big thing into the shop. And that could be the case, but I have to say, normally if it's a big body, I'm all about it. Now with this graveside delivery vehicle, we have one plan, one chore, and that is make it perform and have a whole lot of fun doing it. And if you look at it, well, we've got plenty of fun to have. This thing doesn't cost you a whole lot to buy, and up under the hood, it's got a 500 cubic inch engine. So making that much engine perform usually isn't all that difficult. Now with the design of this particular chassis, it's pretty straightforward as well. It's got disc brakes on the front, coil spring suspension, leaf springs in the back, so doing some performance upgrades, well, isn't gonna take a lot of work. Now what we are gonna do is make this thing have about 500 horse, 700 foot-pounds of torque, take it back to the track and build one car that everybody's gonna recognize when they see it. To kick it off, we're gonna get busy up under the hood. The power plant is gonna get several components like heads, cam, intake, and carb to resurrect plenty of horsepower. Also, the trans is gonna need a bit of some attention, so a new converter and a shift kit is a must. With the factory exhaust manifolds and tiny pipes, it's easy to say they have a chokehold on us. So we'll 86 them and install headers and fab up some side pipes that will rattle your bones. Those loud pipes are gonna give the outside a bit of a sinister look, but we're not stopping there. We're gonna doctor on the suspension to give our creepy hauler a bad attitude. Lose those classy caps and spray on a fresh coat of gloss black to the wheels. And fit them with some slicks out back to have a death grip on the pavement. We really want our hearse to move down the track, and a good way to do that without breaking the bank is to lighten the load. So the plan is to attack the interior and shed some dead weight, like the couch that GM used for a front seat. It's gotta be heavy, so swapping in some buckets should help out. When we're all said and done, Overtaker is gonna be a ride that will grab the attention of your soul, no matter your status or existence. To get our engine out, we're gonna have to drain the fluids. Then we can start disassembly of the engine bay, making sure to get rid of that clunky radiator. Man, that copper radiator is heavy. Jeez Louise. Drop that one too. Man, we get some power in this thing. It's gonna raise my spirit for sure. We're not using the factory exhaust, so it can go. Man, this thing's heavy too. Jeez Louise. Then we'll remove the drive shaft. Oh. One thing that's kind of unique to a Cadillac is it has a metal fan shroud that's made into the core support of the car. Now with the performance mods that we're planning to make, we're not going to be using that mechanical fan that this thing came with from the factory. So I'm going to do a bit of trimming, get this big hunk of metal out of the way. And yeah. That probably saved us at least 8 grams. One cool thing about taking this old ugly motor out of this ugly hearse, you don't really have to be too bashful with it. You can not really worried about bumping into stuff. You don't want to break nothing, but it's all right if you scratch something. Guess we gotta get that transmission off. We'll need a firmer shift at the track, so we'll upgrade the tranny. Well, we just snatched the engine and transmission out of our old hearse here, and the first thing we're gonna get dirty with is gonna be our transmission. Now this is just a 400 turbo, just like they put in pickup trucks and big block cars and so on and so forth. And what we're gonna do on this thing is make it shift a whole lot better than it did when it was in this old big black car, because riding in a Cadillac, you know it's kind of a soft shifting thing. Whenever we were out making those hot laps in our hauler, this thing performed just like it should, nice and comfy. But that's not what we're after. We're going for a performance-minded shift. And with that, we're going to be installing a B&M Shift Improver Kit. Now the kit isn't all that complicated. It comes with some gaskets, a mid plate, and a couple of drill bits that we have to make the decision. Do we want to go down the RV and towing path or street and strip? And I bet you guys already know the answer to that. Now before you go to install one of these on your ride, you need to make sure that the transmission itself is in good condition. Now ours acted just fine, but we're going to get that pan off to make sure there isn't a whole bunch of shavings and clutches down off in there. So it's time to get greasy. That's all of them. I mounted that transmission on the stand like it is for a reason. I wanted all the settlement in the pan to stay in the pan. If you'd flip that transmission over, well, sometimes all that stuff falls back into the tranny. Now looking in our pan, the fluid looks nice. It's all red. You don't want your fluid to be burnt or brown, that kind of stuff. And with it, we also have some settlement in the bottom of here, but that's normal. It's time for us to snatch that valve body off. If we would have found far more gunk, we would be looking at a complete overhaul. This modification will not only improve the performance, but it also helps to extend our tranny's life by reducing clutch slippage. If you're tearing into a transmission and it hasn't been doctored on, there should be 6 check valves. If you only find 3, somebody's already installed a street and strip kit. The object here is not to remove all the transmission fluid, but you just want to check all the gasket surface to make sure it's clean. We're in pretty good shape. We'll slap our valve body in the vise so that we can compress this piston, remove an E-clip, take out that spring for our street and strip setup. The next thing we're going to have to do is take this 3/16 bit that's supplied in the kit and enlarge 2 holes here on our plate. It's no big deal, but it's going to wake up that transmission for sure. Since we're looking for a firm shift, we're only going to be using 3 of the 6 check balls. Now, I know doing something like this can be a bit intimidating, but if you take your time and follow the instructions, you'll be chirping tires in no time. Basically, how these few modifications work, it increases the fluid volume to the clutch packs and modifies the timing for less overlap between shifts. Well, that's just one of the many modifications that we're going to be doing to this old Cadillac back here. Now, I know a few of you guys probably aren't really into hearses, but you will be eventually.
Today on Detroit Muscle, we dive into the heart of our hearse, upgrading our 500 cubic inch engine with a new cam and better flowing induction.
We'll give our 500 Caddy a facelift with new paint and accessories, then head out to look for a rear end that can transfer all that power to the track. Hey y'all, welcome to Detroit Muscle. Whenever it comes to sheer American horsepower, one thing that probably doesn't cross your mind is a Cadillac. We've got one here in the shop, and to call it tons of fun, that's kind of an understatement. Now, we've already pulled the engine out from under the hood, and today our chore is taking that, applying a recipe to make some serious heavy horsepower. This is 500 cubic inches of Detroit engineering. Now, I know it doesn't look like a whole lot right now, and the power output isn't all that impressive either. It makes somewhere in the neighborhood of 200 horse. But after swapping out a couple of parts, pulling some wrenches, well, this thing's gonna make right at 1 horsepower per cubic inch. So that's 500. Oh, and the torque number is pretty impressive as well. Try 700 of them. To achieve those numbers, we'll start by disassembling the accessories on our engine. We're going to be removing all the heavy old parts like the alternator, followed by the clunky air compressor. Then we'll unbolt our power steering and fuel pumps. A small portion of these pieces we will be reusing, but several, you could say, are past their prime, so they're headed to the scrap bin. With all of our trinkets removed off of our power plant, it's time for us to do a bit of some scraping and some spraying, because I can't put this decrepit looking thing back into that fine specimen of a Cadillac. We're removing over 44 years of crud that is built up on this old workhorse. It takes a little bit of elbow grease and finesse, but once we've scraped the dirt and grime off, spray it down with a little degreaser. Time to spray. We're using CRC's Heavy Duty Pro Strength Degreaser. It's a water-based biodegradable foam that penetrates heavy oils and fluids. We sprayed this thing down, let it set for a few minutes, and boy did it melt that grease away. After a bit of this scrubbing and some loving, we're pretty much ready to go ahead and tear this thing down. It looks pretty good. But that thing's gonna be crazy heavy. Hope that old intake ain't so heavy I need a cherry picker. Could be. I bet it's heavy. Few of you guys may have heard the old saying, cheaper way to go faster is to unload the truck. That means simply get lighter. Now with this old big Cadillac, this thing weighs north of 600 pounds fully dressed. Now we're gonna try to lighten this thing up some. Now with our intake, it's made out of cast iron, so it's gotta go. They make an aluminum one that's gonna flow a lot better, and so that's what we're after. Now there are gonna be a few other things we're gonna get rid of, but first, let's get this intake off. And I ain't looking forward to this. That ain't too bad. Ain't too good though. Jeez. I'm just kind of curious. Let's see what this thing weighs. Dang, almost 50 pounds. Yeah, that other one's gonna be a lot lighter than that. Now let's get this valley pan off and let's hope we don't find any treasures. Come on, baby. That's not too bad. That's actually pretty clean. There's a little crud right here around the hot spots of the head. Other than that, where's the old motor? Ain't bad at all. Got him. Loose. Whenever you're pulling out push rods, that's usually pretty easy, but whenever you go to snatch out those lifters, well, them things can be a pain sometimes, and here's why. If you'll notice, there's some crud built up here on the bottom side of that lifter. Whenever you try to pull that back through, all that gunk binds up inside that board surface. That's what keeps you from pulling it out. A quick trick to getting these out is to spray a little solvent or lubricant onto the lifter to help dissolve that crud. Finally, now we can take them heads off. Now normally we would be taking off those exhaust manifolds, but we're really not in the market for boat anchors, so we're just leaving them on there. Bend with your back, not with your knees. Jeez Louise. Come on. 75 pounds worth. Yep, that's heavy. Now Mark gives me a hard time about being such a fan of big bodies like this big behemoth of a car behind me, and the reason I really enjoy them is because normally they come with big cubic inch up under the hood, and this is a perfect example. I've got a piston out of a small block Chevy. It's a 350 flat top. Check this thing out inside the bore of this thing. This thing is almost 3/8 of an inch smaller than the hole in this engine. Now that's why someone coined the phrase, there's no replacement for displacement. We're planning to swap out our bump stick on our Caddy, so a bit more teardown is in order. We got to get this timing cover off, the distributor out of the way. Oh, can't forget all these ooey gooey innards. Camshaft's out. I got a little bit more cleaning to do, but I can tell you, we're just about ready to exercise the demons.
With the engine stripped down, now it's time to install our upgrades, making this Caddy 500 a torque monster.
Well, we're about elbow deep into adding some motivation back into our Cadillac. We've got the intake and heads removed, cam and lifters, and it's all cleaned up, so it's time for some new parts. Now, one key component to making a Cadillac breathe fire is all in the heads. I've got a friend of mine here, it's John Walker. He's what I call a Cadillac connoisseur, and he brought along a table full of goodies. What's up with those heads?
A set of 425 heads that we baked and blasted, cleaned them all up. They're 5-axis CNC ported, and we opened them up for larger valves. On the combustion chamber side, you can see where we've opened up the seat to accept a 110 thousandths larger valve. And then we opened up the ports. From the factory, Cadillac heads are known to be restrictive in performance application. These were CNC ported for both port volume and airflow.
And we both know that means power. Is there anything special about the valves?
These valves were originally for a 455 Pontiac and work great for a Cadillac.
Now, I also looked at these rocker arm assemblies. These things are pretty impressive, especially compared to that junk that we pulled out of that thing.
They're a full-length shaft system made for us by Harlan Sharp. They come in a 1:7 ratio, both adjustable and non-adjustable.
Man, those are snazzy, and I can't wait to get all these goodies bolted onto that 500 over there and out playing around in my hearse. You have any suggestions for us?
Hit the nitrous button and hold on.
Firmly?
Firmly.
All right, I'll take that into consideration. I gotta get to work. Let me let you out, buddy.
Well, those cylinder heads are definitely gonna improve the performance on our Cadillac. And you know, there's not that many parts available on the market for these things, but thankfully there are a few, including this camshaft and timing set that we got from Summit Racing. This thing's got more lift, more duration. It's gonna really complement those heads nicely. We'll add a little assembly lube to our cam, then slide it in. Lift on this cam is 520 thousandths on the intake and 504 on the exhaust. The duration at 50 thousandths lift is 234 degrees on the intake side and 249 degrees on the exhaust side. Now we're ready to install our timing chain assembly and we'll torque it to spec. Now it's time for our oil pump and filter housing. It's actually a really nice design, and we'll want to torque these as well. Our timing cover gasket is next, and we're going to use a little RTV on both sides of our gasket to make sure it doesn't leak. Then we can add our cover and install the water pump gasket, followed by the water pump. We got the water pump along with the gasket set from rockauto.com. Now all that's left is to torque it down. With the new seal in our timing cover, it's time to install the crank hub. This is an uncommon design where the harmonic balancer bolts to the hub, which is a press fit. Now we can roll the 500 Caddy over so we can install the oil pan, but first we want to clean up the surface and then we can install it with the new gasket and bolt it down. Now we're torquing these bolts for the oil pan, working our way from the inside out. And the reason we're doing that is because we want to make sure they're all tightened the same. That way it's going to keep it from leaking over time. Well, we've got ourselves a short block. Now we just need a pair of cylinder heads and maybe even a fresh coat of paint. This thing will be like brand new. We finish upgrading our Caddy 500
and show you a tip on how to correctly measure your push rod. Well, we're making some pretty good progress. We got the bottom end of our Caddy all assembled. I'm gonna slap our gasket in place, and then I get the joy of picking up this giant piece of iron.
You got it?
Yeah, I got most of it.
Well, I got the easy job, and that's prepping these ARP head studs. These things are great because they come as a kit, directly fit for our Cadillac, and then also these things are going to hold more than we could possibly throw at this thing. I mean, we are going to be spraying it, and this is one of the precautions you take, and it's an easy one to do.
You excited?
So excited. You know the torque sequence?
No, you know a torque spec?
I can get it.
I bet we're gonna need a cheater pipe.
All right, got it dialed in for you for the first round.
All righty. We're going to torque these down at 3 different settings using the same sequence, ending at 110. With those all torqued down, now it's time to spray on a splash of color. Jeez, that thing's heavy. Excuse me.
Look at that.
Beep, beep, beep. What do you guys think about that electric green paint? Well, I wanted that Cadillac to get attention, even with the hood up. Now, the next thing that we need to do is measure for pushrod length. And this is a high performance application, but even with a stock rebuild, it's a good idea. Because what happens sometimes is the heads can be milled or the block can be decked, and that messes with the length of the pushrod. The first thing that you need to do to get started is bring the lifter that you're going to start adjusting with, well, on base circle. We're going to start with these two because they're easy to see. This is the intake lifter, so to get it where we need it, we're going to rotate the motor over until the exhaust lifter just starts to come up. Now we need to drop on our rocker shaft assembly and check out the contact point of our roller tip to the top of the valve. Ideal operating contact is in the center third of the valve stem tip. You want to start at the top third and roll down and then back up. With our application, we have to torque these down for an accurate reading. Now I want to check out the tip and see exactly where it's at, and I want to use this little marker. Tell me the story. I'm going to scribble a little of this stuff on there and tap the roller on it. That line indicates our contact point. It's on the upper third, just like we need. Now, to do a task like this, it's handy to have the right stuff, kind of like these push rod measuring tools that we got from Summit Racing. Now, we're going to be needing this big old long one for this big old Cadillac, but they have them in different lengths for different applications. And how it works, you basically just unscrew one end of it, and that makes it longer. Let's slap this thing in, see where we're at. You want to make sure this push rod is seated on both ends, and you just keep unscrewing it until you just feel some pressure. You don't want to keep cranking on it and depress the plunger inside that lifter. That's this. Now I need to pull off this rocker assembly to get that rod out, then we can measure it. To get our exact length, I like to use a set of calipers. You just slide those in there, clamp her down, and that gives us the length of this push rod. This number is at 0 lash, and since we don't have any adjustable rockers on this one, we're gonna have to add 50 thousandths to give us some preload. The next thing we need to do is slap on that intake, and we're getting dangerously close to having this thing ready to drop in our caddy. Before we drop on our intake, we'll add a little bit of RTV and a new gasket to make sure everything seals properly. We're going to top off this Cadillac with this aluminum intake that we got from Summit Racing. Now it's going to really add quite a bit of power to it because it's less restrictive than that factory unit. Plus, it's a whole lot lighter. That original one was almost 50. This one is less than 20.
I know we can't bolt these in yet, but I want to see how it looks. Oh, look at that. The baby one.
Yeah, just 850.
Can't wait to see that in the car.
One man's junk is another man's treasure. We head out to an all-Ford salvage yard to look for some parts for our Cadillac. Well, we've been making some really good progress on our hearse, and I'm out here today kind of scrounging around trying to work on our next upgrade. It's easy to say that with that Caddy, well, it's an obscure car, and the aftermarket support is kind of minimal. And what I'm wanting to do is kind of fix up the rear end. Now with that hearse, it's got airplane gears under it, and I want something with a little bit more grit to it. Something, you know, that's gonna peel back the pavement. So hopefully I can find something out here in all these old carcasses. What got me to thinking about digging around in a Ford salvage yard is one of these, the 8.8 rear axle. They come in everything under the sun, from Mustangs to pickup trucks to even SUVs. And they have a lot going for them, and that's pretty much why it makes them so popular with the hot rodders. One is, since they're plentiful, that means they're cheap. Also, the gear ratios in them is a vast array, from low to even airplane gears. And also, these things come from the factory, oftentimes with a pause unit. Now, this thing isn't going to work for our application because it's a little bit narrow and it's probably too small. But luckily for us, this thing does have a big brother. So what I'm looking for is the 975, and what that refers to is the diameter of the ring gear, and it comes in the large SUVs and the pickup trucks. Now, their gear ratios are the 355, the 373, and the 411. For our application, this 373 will be sweeter than honey. This rear axle's got a lot going for it. It's got that ratio that we're looking for, it's got the pause unit, and this thing's got factory rear disc brakes. So let's tally that up. All right, and all right. Let's get this thing out from under there. Whew, that's plenty heavy enough. No kidding. Well, I got me a rusty gem. I'm gonna have to do some modifying, but that's just a stone for a stepper. Today on Detroit Muscle, our Caddy Hearse gets an exhaust that will wake the dead.
Plus, we add cooling and fuel systems to keep our 500 Caddy engine running right.
Then top it all off with some boost juice to take Overtaker to horsepower heaven. I do believe that green paint is a little brighter than the cap.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't match the car at all, but that's what makes it cool. It looks like a crate engine, and it's not. This is the same boat anchor that Tommy pulled out of this thing a while back, and then we upgraded it. Ported heads, cam, intake, and that's gonna add quite a bit of power, but that's not gonna double the power like we wanna do. We're actually going for over 500 horse with this thing.
Now, to ensure that big number, well, we're gonna be spraying this thing with about 150, maybe a 200 shot.
Maybe 300.
Well, either way, to get this thing to make that kind of power, we also have to address the other systems on this thing. And one of them would be the exhaust.
Right, I'm gonna go ahead and grab the headers.
Now, with the exhaust on this car, it isn't gonna be just some old twin stick sticking out the back with your pawpaw tips. It's gonna be a little bit different. It's gonna add some style and possibly even allow us to burp some fire.
Well, you'd think it'd be kind of difficult to find a set of headers for a 1975 Cadillac Hearse, but Summit Racing had exactly what we needed with these headers by Sanderson. These are mid-length, so they're going to lend themselves to what Tommy has planned for the rest of the exhaust system, but other than that, they've got a lot of other benefits. They're going to free up power over those factory exhaust manifolds. They're lighter weight, and they've got 1 7/8 primaries, 3-inch collectors, and a nice ceramic coating. We've got plenty of room to get these things on here. We just need to get them bolted on and we can move on to the rest of that system. It's not uncommon to fight with a set of headers during install, but working with big bodies, they fall right into place.
Now, it's easy to say that our old Cadillac Hearse makes quite a statement. I want to do the same thing with our exhaust. So today I'm going to be fabbing up some side pipe mufflers. Now, we picked up all this stuff from MagnaFlow, and they offer several components, you know, in their builder series. The first thing that we need to do to get started is do a bit of measuring on the car. Here, we're trying to get this thing as close as possible to the front side of the rocker near the wheel. With a couple of bends and some tack welds, we hit the sweet spot. Well, I got my lead pipe on my exhaust basically where I want it. Now the next thing I need to do is throw up that big old pipe and then the inlet tube to it to see exactly where we're at. I'm probably gonna have to do some trimming, just no big deal. Our main tube is 4 inches and our inner is 3. Yeah, we're gonna have to cut that off. I like the height right there though. That transition doesn't bother me. Need to do some marking. The tube coming off our header is 2.5 inches, so I fabbed up an adapter to connect it to our 90. Now back here on the rear, it's a little bit more of aesthetics than I would call function, because basically the exhaust is going to come out of this thing and it's going to be in the direction that you point it. Now normally people mount a tip kind of at a horizontal, or they kick them down a bit, and y'all have probably seen that kick up some dust. Now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to turn it up and then cut it out in kind of a C shape, and that'll give it a bit more of a monster feel to it. And after I draw that out, we're gonna remove this thing, get over to the table, and then we can build the innards. Now this next step is going to convert our side pipe in a bit more of a muffler direction. And what we're going to be doing is adding these baffles that we got. Now what I need is 87 5/8 from this tab to that little mark right there. So we're going to have to weld a couple of these tubes together. That's no big deal. All right, that'll work. That's good enough. We'll slide on these stamped rings that will help locate and support our baffle tube. Once it's all tacked up, we can slide our baffle inside our exhaust tube and tap her in. Body saw makes light work of carving up our custom tip, and we'll smooth out the edges. Small amount of massaging and burning in some wire, and we're almost to the finish line. Now we just need to fab up some hangers to keep these side pipes in place. Don't have to get too elaborate here. We're just using the flat stock with a few cuts, drill a hole, an isolator, a little bit of welding, bolt it in.
Wow, that wasn't what I expected, but I like it.
It's pretty impressive, isn't it?
That is the biggest muffler I think I've ever seen.
Well, the wheelbase had a whole lot to do with that.
It's gonna be loud?
Oh, brother, it's probably gonna be plenty loud.
We ditched the mechanical fan for an electric one to save horsepower and keep our engine running cool. We're plugging away on our Cadillac Hearse that we're calling Overtaker, and we're trying to make this thing scream down the drag strip. Now, when you're talking about making a car quicker, there's a couple of things you can do, say low-hanging fruit, to do that. One would be shed weight, and the other is going to be to free up horsepower. And we're doing both here under the hood on our Caddy. One thing we've done is completely eliminated the AC compressor. That's the original one. It was big and heavy. That, along with the condenser, it's about 40 pounds that we saved. And when you're talking about shedding weight, a pound or two here and there is good. 40, well, that's pretty significant. Another thing we've done is eliminated that manual fan. This is a 500 cubic inch engine from the factory, big heavy car. There's a lot of strain on that cooling system, so that required a big fan that had a lot of drag to it, and that sucked power from the engine, maybe 10 or 15 horsepower, so we got rid of that. The next thing we're gonna do is fill this big void here, and that's gonna be yet another way for us to save some weight. Well, you probably could have guessed we were doing an aluminum radiator swap, but why is this such a popular upgrade? Well, when you take a look at this factory radiator that came out of our Cadillac, there's a lot to be desired here. This is a copper and brass style. It's got copper tubes and fins with brass tanks. It is leaking, but that's not the only drawback to this. These are super heavy and they're expensive to repair and even more expensive to replace. So if you were doing a chalk mark style restoration on an old Caddy or any other old car, you might want to keep this. But other than that, you've got aftermarket radiators that are readily available. As a matter of fact, we got this aluminum one from rockauto.com. It's a lot lighter and it's even thinner. When you talk about the design, radiators have increased in efficiency over the years. This is a single core at 1.25 inches thick, just as efficient as that original radiator, which is a 3-core at 2 inches thick. Now we talk about weight savings. The original one was almost 30 pounds. The new aluminum, 10 pounds. So we've got almost a 20-pound savings. Well, because we eliminated that mechanical fan, we had to replace it with some electric ones. Now, there's not a lot of aftermarket support for these old Caddies, so we had to go with something universal, and we got this kit from Frostbite. Just need to get it mounted to the radiator, get it wired up. We're gonna hold this in place with a panel clamp, and we're just gonna mount it using some regular tech screws and washers. All right, time for some hoses. When we were on rockauto.com ordering that radiator, we got these OEM replacement hoses as well. You just need to add some water and a cap and that's good to go. Now when you're doing an electric fan conversion like we did, you want to make sure that your alternator is going to handle it. Now maybe just be that this is a Hearse or all Cadillacs had it. This is a big enough alternator to handle that. We just need to put a relay in there to run those fans, which we'll do after we install the fuel system, and that's next.
We'll tuck our tank in Overtaker, adding an upgraded fuel system. Well, I guess you could say we're about 6 feet deep with our makeover on our old Cadillac. And the next thing we're gonna dig into is the fuel system. We did a little bit of some detective work and we realized that the factory tank that was up under this car had some corrosion in it. So the next thing we're gonna have to do is swap in a fuel cell. That's the best solution we've got.
So you're gonna just like throw it in there and mount it with those little, what do you call those?
Anchors? Yeah, it would be a killer idea, but we need, you know, to be a bit more safe.
Okay, so where do we need to start?
Well, I know after looking under the car, there's a big gnarly brace that runs across the back side here. So we're gonna have to move forward, cut a big square hole, and I wanna recess the tank so it's nice and flush. Kind of looks like it belongs.
I like it. What do you want me to do?
Get out of the way. I'm gonna get to tearing.
No problem.
Need a screwdriver. Don't really know what to call these things, but we'll start by taking out the gasket clamp plates and rollers. That brace I mentioned earlier is 19 inches from the bumper in toward the car, so that's why I made my mark. I'm gonna have to measure from left to right to find center, and then I'm gonna cut me a hole that's 18 1/4 by 16 3/4. Think. everything's square, these two lines are gonna match up. Close enough we can cut it. Well, that's the first hole through the top floor. Now we got to make another cut on the second floor. It's no big deal. We'll use a plumb bob on all four corners, draw a couple lines, make a couple cuts. Not really supposed to climb in the back of a hearse, but once. This is for, you know, good times. Now, if everything goes right, this little tank here should fall right into place. Oh yeah. Now, I still got a few things to do. I need to remove these bolts so that I can anchor it to the floor. I need to make a plate to cover up from where them rollers were. And also, I gotta execute my plumbing. Now, with this tank, the cap doesn't breathe, and this port here is how this thing is gonna let the air in and out. So, I'm gonna run this outside of the car. That way, whenever you're sitting in here, you won't be smelling fuel.
Well, while Tommy's getting the fuel cell mounted, I'm tackling the rest of the fuel system, including the carburetor here. It's an 850 CFM Holly Street HP with mechanical secondaries, and it's going to be plenty for what our Cadillac 500 will need. Now, I didn't mount it permanently yet because we've got some spice we're going to sprinkle on there a little bit later. As for the rest of the fuel system, we're using what's here on the table. It's pretty straightforward. We've got a pickup, we've got a fuel pump and regulator assembly, post filter, and all the hose to get it connected. I'm going to take these to the back, get them installed. And we'll see how this turned out.
What do you think?
Wow.
Even you can do things when you apply yourself.
I like it.
Yeah, it don't look too bad.
Yeah, no, I'm all for it. And you know, I got to thinking about you were going to gut all of this out of here to save weight. What happened with that?
You talked me into it.
Smart man.
Let me get out of your way. I'm gonna grab me a snack. You got any change?
For our pickup, we're using Holley's Hydromat. This stuff helps prevent pump starvation during fuel slosh, and it also acts as a 100 micron pre-filter for your pump. All right, now I just need to get this thing in the air and get that pump mounted. All right, when you're mounting a fuel pump like the one we're going with, you want to make sure of a few things. One, you want to make sure it's close to the tank because these pumps like to push and not pull. On that note, you want to make sure also that it's not mounted above the tank because then it's going to have to draw the fuel out and it doesn't like doing that. Another thing, you want to make sure you're away from any moving parts like suspension. We're plenty clear from our leaf spring here. And then also the exhaust, which with our new side pipes, we don't have to worry about back here. So we found the perfect spot here. Got the bracket in place. I just need to mount the pump to it, get it plumbed up. We're using this Quick Fuel Technologies 175. And it's a pump and regulator combo, and it'll support 175 gallons per hour. Well, with the pump mounted, it's time to move on to the hoses, and what we decided to go with is this Earl Super Stock. It's a little different than what you normally see us use. This is actually a push-on hose. That makes installation nice and easy, and it'll handle up to 250 PSI. And it's that quick and simple. All I need to do is get these hoses made, get the fuel lines run to the front of the car. We'll have ourselves a fuel system. We have one more surprise to give Overtaker a lethal injection. Well, exhaust system is complete. Cooling system, that's done too. And the fuel system, we just have one more termination to make, but we're not gonna do that just yet because we've got something special up our sleeves.
This next upgrade that we're gonna be doing is basically bolting on 150 horse plus or minus.
maybe like 300 horse, I'm hoping. What we're talking about is a power adder.
Now, normally power adders come in 3 different categories, and the first one I'm going to talk about is kind of my favorite, and it's mainly because it looks so cool. Blowers, huffers, or whatever you want to call them have the goods. Plus, these big hunks of aluminum make power. Doesn't really matter if they're on an old school big block or late model muscle. Oh, and they make some impressive sound.
Now, there is absolutely nothing wrong with the whine of a blower, but when it comes to cool noises, my absolute favorite has to be the whistle of a turbo. Turbochargers are a great way to add plenty of cool factor to just about any hot rod or muscle car. You'll find them as singles or twins, and since they're driven off the exhaust, you can mount them just about anywhere. And you know these things mean business since they have to have their own horsepower relief valve.
Both of those have their benefits, but they can be pricey and kind of complicated to install. For us, working on that obscure Cadillac, we knew it'd be difficult finding an application for a 500 Cadillac, plus we wanted our dollars to make sense. So our plan of attack is to be spraying this thing with some nitrous. It doesn't take but a couple of hours to install, plus it's economical. Don't forget that allure of power to push of a button. Come here, baby. Oh yeah.
On a wet nitrous system, the nitrous, or N2O, and fuel are injected into the engine by way of solenoids and regulated by orifices, or jets. The precise amount of fuel and nitrous enter the combustion chamber, causing a more dense air-fuel mixture. That mixture gets ignited, creating greater cylinder pressure and ultimately more horsepower. This particular kit we're using is called a plate system that we got from NOS. It sandwiches between your carburetor and your intake manifold. With the plate in place, the carburetor can sit on top of it and get bolted down. Well, here's why we didn't terminate the fuel feed earlier. We've got to tee into the fuel line because one line has to go to the fuel solenoid of the nitrous system and the other line has to feed the carburetor. Once we figured out the best routing, we just need to get these lines cut, installed, and clamped down tight. Well, that's it for the fuel feed. Now we just need to get some switches installed, get it wired up, and run the nitrous feed, which you really don't want to do till Tommy figures out where he's going to mount the bottle.
To mount a nitrous bottle, it's really basic. It comes with some brackets, you got to make a couple of holes, and you want to make sure that you mount it onto a solid foundation. We're going to put ours here on the floor. Now we could try to hide this thing a little bit, but what's the point in that? Look at this car. You know, Mark, I wonder how many people in this world has put a nitrous setup on a hearse.
Probably very few.
Probably wouldn't hurt if there were a few more out there. I got my end finished up. What about you?
Yeah, I got it connected. Now, I've got this purge solenoid all plumbed up with the little rabbit ears there, so don't mind that. We'll fix it up later when we get the hood on it and come up with something fancy. All right, so I guess all that's left now is just to push the button. Go ahead. Make sure it ain't gonna leak.
There you go. Dude, that looks pretty cool on this end.
That was awesome.
Now, we only got brakes, suspension, wheels and tires, maybe a couple other things, and we'll be out breathing fire and disturbing the peace in this old thing.
I can't wait. Well, for more information on what you saw on the show today, be sure to go to PowerNationTV.com. Call that mission accomplished.
Yeah, we should go celebrate.
You buying the first round?
No, I'll let you.
Today on Detroit Muscle, we get down and dirty with a junkyard axle and plop it under the rear of our drag strip caddy. Plus, we'll give the interior a grim upgrade, but what we find lying under the seat will give you chills. Now, on Detroit Muscle. Hey everybody, welcome to Detroit Muscle. We're partway through the resurrection of our Cadillac Hearse here. Let's just say we're trying to get a 6,000 pound car to do what 6,000-pound cars are not supposed to do, and that is go quick down the drag strip. Now we're kind of stuck in purgatory now, like kind of halfway. We've added a ton of power under the hood, a shot of nitrous, and we upgraded the transmission with a shift kit and sprinkled on a couple of other goodies like side pipes and a fuel cell.
But what we haven't touched is the brakes, suspension, and rear axle. You can tell that all these are engineered for the rider, not the driver. So we're gonna cure all those illnesses today and get started back here. With the rear axle up under our hearse, it has some good going for it, but not a whole lot. First off, it does have a factory pause in it, and I would imagine it's in there because of this scenario. Can you imagine this old car in kind of a off the beaten path on a soft grassy spot? Absolutely. So having that pause would be an added benefit. Now with our gear ratio that's in this thing, it's what I call airplane gears. It's real long-legged. If we were going to stretch it out on the interstate, it'd be perfectly fine. But since we're going to take this thing down the drag strip, well, some deeper gears are in order. And there's not really any aftermarket support, so we can't swap those out. Next thing is the brakes. This thing's got drums and shoes. We're looking for something a little bit more efficient. And you know, swapping over to a disc setup can be pricey and labor intensive. So this has got to go.
Well, I like to give Tommy a hard time and tell him if you want to fix up a GM, put some Ford parts in it, well, we're doing that again today, but instead of a 9-inch rear, we're actually doing a 9.75 rear out of a first-gen Expedition. I know what you're thinking, why a truck rear? Well, there's a lot going on for this thing. It's got that big ring gear, it's got a pause unit, 373 gears already in here from the factory, and massive 13-inch disc brakes out back that will blow those drum brakes away. There are some drawbacks though. It's got several mounts that we're gonna have to cut off. This was a 4-link with a pan hard rod, and it's got purchase here for coil springs. We're probably gonna have to cut most of this out of the way, but for a $200 investment, I'll do a little torching and welding. We're using our oxyacetylene torch to do the heavy cutting. This is a tool we don't use that often in the shop, but it's definitely something handy to have around. With the brackets cut out of the way, we'll grind down the leftovers with our 4.5-inch disc. The goal here is to get the majority of the metal removed. Then we can follow that up with the flapper wheel to smooth it out.
Looks like you're making some pretty good progress there, bud.
Yeah, no thanks to you.
Well, I appreciate all your contributions, and since you're all gussied up, I need you to whack them pads off.
All right.
After getting this thing skint back, it's ready to find its new home. Recycling our old bracket and some hardware makes locating this thing a walk in the park. From the factory, our old Cadillac came with these little rubber bumpers that were here on the top and bottom side of the leaf spring. They were designed to dampen and control vibrations for better ride quality. But with the purpose that we're going with this old big hearse, that's not necessarily good because that would cause some deflection. So them things are hitting the trash can.
With that said, we've got the axle sitting pretty much where it's gonna live, but we still gotta dial in the exact location. We've gotta measure it side to side, make sure it's centered in the car, and then also set the pinion angle. But we can't do that second one yet because we wanna make sure that the car's sitting on the ground, the suspension completely compressed, and sitting at ride height. Not gonna be able to do that for a while, so we might as well move on to getting the rest of our suspension and brakes installed. Up next, a suspension setup that will shockingly improve grip on the drag strip.
Our big block Caddy is going to make a significant torque number, and with us taking this thing down the track, we want it to have the best passing review as possible. So what that means is we need all the traction that we can get. Now normally when people think about traction, they think about the back side of the car with a massive slick, when in all reality, up front is a truckload of it. What I'm referring to is weight. If we can get some of what's up here to shift back there whenever we smash on a skinny pedal, well, that'll do us some good. The way we're planning to do it is relatively economical, and that is with some drag racing shocks. But one slight snag is they don't make a direct application for a 76 Hearse. Can you believe it? Now, there's really no need in it. We're going to get that old one out, and we're going to make something happen.
A little bit of seafoam deep creep will help penetrate that rusty shock hardware. And Tommy's favorite tool, coupled with a ratcheting wrench, and the hard part's done. And underneath, the lower mount comes out with a single bolt.
Those old front shocks come out a whole lot easier than I was anticipating, and for any of you guys who've had to wrestle them things out, you know what I mean. Now up front, we're going to be running a set of the 9010 Lakewood Industry shocks. These will give us the maximum amount of lift whenever we smash on that gas pedal to plant that back side of the hearse. Now out back, we're going to be using a set of their 50/50s, and this is what those numbers mean. A 9010 shock extends rather quickly, while the compression stroke is much slower. A 50/50 compresses and extends at a similar rate with both actions. So when we leave the starting line, we want the car to lift in the front while the rear compresses a bit to load the rear suspension. Then while moving down the track, the front will slowly start to come back down, and this allows the car to maintain traction as we make our pass. Without this action, the tires won't bite as hard, and we could simply just smoke them coming off the line. Let's get started on the front. Now, looking at these things side by side, they're basically the same except for this end. So we're going to press this sleeve out, try to get it in there, and then we can move forward. The arbor press sure does make this task a whole lot easier. If you didn't want to reuse this old stuff, you could use a piece of tubing, but you would have to make sure that it had the proper OD and ID. But since these old shocks are junk, it just makes sense to reuse them. That got it. Now this upgrade has been straightforward, and now we just need to cinch everything down. On this upper mount, the rule of thumb is you want to tighten this nut until that lower grommet is squished out enough that it's the same diameter as that washer. To get these rear shocks up under the Cadillac, I'm going to have to do some modifying. What I've hit is it's about 2 inches shorter than that factory one. As far as the compression length, it's really close. It's only about a 1/4 inch or so off. That's not worth fooling with. So I'm going to have to come up with that extra 2 inches somewhere. Let's do a little measuring to see where we're at. We're at 19 inches. This isn't going to work. The suspension is loaded, meaning it's compressed, and our new shock is 18 3/4 fully extended. So that means we would have no out travel or down travel. So we got to determine whether we want to move this one up or that one down, and that one there is going to be the one we're going to cut on. In situations like this, we could make a new shock mount, but since the factory tab is welded onto the frame, it's just as easy for us to cut them off and move them down. And since we're going to be putting this thing under a lot of stress, we made a couple of little gussets. And all that's left is to burn them in. The rest is pretty straightforward, just like this old Caddy is going to be when it hits the drag strip.
Coming up, how bad are the brakes on this old Caddy? Well, let's just say we found a replacement that's plug and play. Well, we're making great headway on our Cadillac Hearse. We got drag shocks in it on all 4 corners. We've got a rear end installed. We haven't set the pinion angle yet, but like I mentioned earlier, we're gonna wait till the car's on the ground to do that. But as for the brakes, they need some attention. As you can see, these rotors are very rusty. This isn't just surface rust. They're pretty heavily pitted. This thing sat in a junkyard for who knows how long, several years probably. We may be able to get those resurfaced, but it's really not worth it. Just want to replace them, and besides, we want to do an upgrade. As for the pads, well, they're not in great shape either. The friction material's worn almost all the way down, and the backing plates are rusty. So we decided to go to EBC Brakes for one of their pad and rotor kits. This is their Stage 5 Super Street kit, which includes dimpled and slotted rotors that are corrosion protected with a geomet coating. As for the pads, well, these are the yellow stuff. You've seen us use these before. This is a full race pad that's also capable of street use. It's got great bite from cold, so it's ideal for your daily driver that you take to the track from time to time. And if we're spending money to upgrade our rear, this is a great place to do it. All right, let's see what we got here. All right, let's get these pads off of here. They're actually not as worn as I thought they were, probably 50%, but they are pretty rusty. This slide is loose. Let's check the other one. That one's frozen, but we may be able to free it up, but we need to check the piston and get it compressed. Now, the piston's frozen in the caliper. This is very common, especially on junkyard rears. We could probably rebuild the caliper, but I've got a better solution. So this is a Duralast remanufactured caliper that we got from AutoZone. It's made to meet or exceed OE specifications. This thing's completely rebuilt, all new parts, already lubed up, ready to go on the vehicle, and we even upgraded the hose as well because our hoses were already trashed, which is, again, typical with junkyard rear ends. So this is what we're gonna use to fix up our brakes. We're gonna have a brand new brake system here in the rear of our Caddy. We'll slide our new rotor on. Then we can remove the old clips and replace them with the new ones that came with our calipers. We'll slather on a little disc brake lube and install the new caliper. Another cool thing about these Duralast calipers is not only do they have new brake caliper bolts, but they also have a new banjo bolt pre-installed with the copper gaskets. So all you need to do is install your hose and tighten it down. You're good to go. Well, since we switched to disc brakes, we're gonna have to redo our lines back here. I'm gonna go ahead and mount this hose on the frame, make some new hard lines, and once I get that terminated, this will be ready for some wheels and tires.
One thing that you may run into if you're doing an odd duck conversion like we are on that Cadillac as far as the rear is finding a set of wheels that's gonna match front and rear and the attitude of your ride. Luckily for us, we found this jewel. This is a stock wheel that would come on an F-150, but it would be the spare. This is Ford's attempt to save some cash. Now, like I mentioned, we wanted the front and rear to match. Summit had exactly what we needed. This is a US wheel that they offer as their Rat Rod series, and with a splash of color on these, maybe some pinstripes, and even some chrome lug nuts, it'd church it up a bit. Now I just need a clean scuff, and we'll be ready to paint. We're gonna spray these down with some wax and grease remover because of the potential contamination that may be on them. Then a little hand jiving with a red pad will prep the surface for our paint. And one more wipe down and she's ready to go. I'm gonna spray on 2 coats of Summit Racing's jet black base coat and then 2 coats of clear. I want those wheels to be as shiny as a new penny. We're gonna mix up a few ounces of paint, add our reducer, and a small splash of hardener. You wanna make sure to mix this thoroughly. And now it's ready for trigger time. Painting wheels can be a little complicated because of all the curves and opposing angles. The trick here is to make sure everything is covered with a nice, even coat. After a few minutes to let this flash off, we're ready to start our second coat of black. Once that's dried, it's time to spray on our shiny. Now we've got to let our goodies in the booth dry for a little while so that we can handle them. And while they're doing their thing, I'm going to tell you about the rear tires that we're going to be running up under our Cadillac. I went to Summit Racing and picked up a set of M&H Racemaster DOT approved tires. These are a 275/50 R17 that are 10.5 inches wide. They're going to fill up that steel wheel we're going to be running, and it's going to look pretty killer when we're all said and done. Now the next thing I'm going to do with this tire machine is add my pinstripe. It's time to do some painting. Now I know most people don't use them for this, but this rotating deck is going to help me. That's a nice looking piece. Now we just got to get it up on the car.
Up next, we dig out the seat in our Cadillac Hearse to make room for some racing buckets. But what we found along the way was an eerie surprise.
Well, this journey of us resurrecting this old Cadillac Hearse has been quite a unique situation. And I have to say, I'm so glad that we're getting dangerously close to the end of it, primarily because I'm running out of clever and creepy sayings to describe this thing. It's kind of killing me.
Well, the one thing we haven't touched would have to be the living room here. And it leaves a lot to be desired, although it is pretty comfy and retro looking. We need to upgrade the dash a little bit, maybe with some gauges so we can keep an eye on that engine. And then also our seat here. It is cushy and it looks cool, but it's not going to provide the support we need, especially driving down the drag strip. So this thing has to go. I can get this couch out of here and maybe I'll find some treasures between the cushions. Well, already found some treasure, and it wasn't coins between the cushions. It's in part of a latex exam glove box, and it's definitely got some age to it. Can't wait to see what else we find under there. Well, I didn't find any coins between the cushions like I thought I would, but there's plenty of treasure to be had here under the seat. Now, earlier I found that box that was for latex gloves, so check this out. An actual latex glove that's been under here for I don't know how long, and I don't even like touching this with my gloves on. So, and then you got a flathead screwdriver, a pair of pliers, don't know what that's for. And then there's several flowers in here. You can pretty much guess what these were for. Anyway, I'm gonna leave this mess for Tommy to clean up. He's the one that loves this car so much.
I am rather fond of this old thing, so I had to show the interior some loving. We went to Summit Racing and got a pair of their universal sport seats. They have black cloth on them, and that's gonna look as snazzy as a brand new tuxedo inside of there. But before we go to fabricating, I gotta do some house cleaning. Found some goodies as well. You guys check this out. This is from an old funeral home from Greenville, Tennessee. And it appears to be some aspirin and some smelling salts. Now to get our seat mounted requires a few pieces of metal. The manufacturing process is simple. Some flat bar, some tubing, and some metal gluing. I had to fab up these little feet that I'm gonna bolt to the bottom of our seat tracks. Once I get them tight, this thing's ready to go in the car. With our seats snugged up, we'll complement our interior with an impressive tack and move on to the steering wheel. You know, sometimes people can feel like they're chained to bad decisions, but when they're chrome plated, it makes them all right.
This buttons up our Caddy Hearse. The next time you see this rolling coffin, it'll be speeding down the drag strip with deadly speed. You can follow along and catch our day at the track at PowerNationTV.com.
Today on Detroit Muscle, our slow and hefty hearse gets a chance at redemption.
This Cadillac puts out on the dyno, and it's a hoot at the track. Now on Detroit Muscle.
Hey guys, welcome to Detroit Muscle. Today is going to be a pretty good day for us because we finally get to reap the benefits of our hard work. We're going to be taking our refined and rejuvenated Grim Sleeper out to the track.
That's right, guys. This old Cadillac's first trip down the racetrack, well, it wasn't nothing to write home about. It was so slow, it would have been late to its own funeral. And now at that moment, we realized that it was going to take a few old school tricks to help boost its performance and lower the ET.
When we drug this into the shop, we jumped right on it. With this big body comes big cubic inches, 500 of them. And with an engine of this size, it normally doesn't take much to make some good power. So with a few go-fast parts, our engine and trans
Look at that.
is ready to go.
We didn't stop there. A great way to increase the sensation of flying by the seat of your pants is with gearing, so a rear axle swap was a must. We found an unusual candidate that had all the goods: a posi, a 373 gear ratio, and disc brakes. After a little fab work, we were ready to go.
To add some style and performance, we fashioned up some huge side pipes. We wanted these to make a statement, just like our hearse. So with the help of some MagnaFlow stainless tubing, I believe they did. We've crossed our T's, dotted our I's, and we're pretty much ready to fire off our Cadillac. We just have a couple last things we need to do. Got to dump some fuel in it, and Daniel, well, he's got one last thing.
Now, since we're planning on spraying this old Cadillac with a hefty dose of throttle in a bottle, there's a couple of precautionary measures that we need to address. The one we're going to dive into today is spark plugs. What is a spark plug? Well, it's a simple device that ignites air and fuel mixture by delivering voltage from the ignition system to the combustion chamber. Now, there are many different types of spark plugs, and one thing they all have in common is their function. These aren't all created equal. There's hot plugs, cold plugs, and everything in between, and that's where the term heat range comes into play. So when you have an engine that's burning some oil, what you can do is go up in heat range to help minimize fouling. Or if you're like us and you're going to be running a healthy dose of nitrous, well, that's going to impact your decision. When you're running nitrous, you always want to run a colder plug, and the more nitrous you run, the colder your choice needs to be. Now, I'm going to show you how to read these things. Now let's look at these here. We've got some new ones, some used ones, and some dead ones. This one's dead. It's covered in carbon, it's pretty much fouled completely out, but it's telling a story. You just have to know how to read it. Now with this one, you either have too much fuel or you're burning some oil, or the plug's just too cold for your application. Now with this one, it's almost completely white. Well, that's not what you want either. Now the reason this porcelain is so white could be a result of a couple of things. Either one, the air-fuel mixture is too lean, two, the timing's way off, or three, the plug's just too hot. Now this is what you want. It looks like it's been washed in sweet tea. The amber color tells you that your engine is tuned for maximum efficiency.
You must have heard me come in talking about maximum efficiency.
Yeah, that's you all over.
You ain't got all them plugs in yet?
You're not done with that cheesecake yet?
Because I'm working on it. It was a big piece of like 3 of them.
Oh, okay. What about the gas?
That probably comes later.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna gap these plugs.
Coming up with a little nitrous, we test how far this Cadillac will go on the dyno.
All right, you're all programmed in, and this came in under its own power. So now the big question, what's been done to it?
Man, we've done basically a head cam intake swap. You know, it's 500 cubic inch. We didn't touch the bottom end. This thing from the factory made about 200 horse. So if we make more than that, we've knocked it out of the park.
I like it.
No, and with that, you know, it shouldn't be all that hard to make some significant power from there. When I say significant, 50% gain with nitrous.
Oh, that's right. We're going to spray it.
Yeah. So it's all good, man. With this type of cubic inch, it should be pretty easy to do.
I think so. I mean, everything looks like it's where it's supposed to be. It's got some nice parts on it. You know, with the nitrous kit on it, you got a new carb, you got a nice new intake manifold. I guess the first thing we got to do is make sure everything is where it's supposed to be. So what I'd like to do is get it fired up. We'll check timing because I assume we want to make some naturally aspirated poles.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll just see what it makes, just all motor, if you will, and then spray it with, say, 75, 100 shot, and then step it up because I want to spray it as much as we can to get the biggest gain we can. Because look at this dude, man. It's a long wheelbase Cadillac.
Well,
we need all the help we can get.
I like the way you think. So. All right, so first thing is get it fired up, make sure we have tack signal. Let's check timing and go from there.
We can do that next.
All right. This will be exciting.
We're not adjusting the timing here. We're just verifying where it's at from our previous tune. And yeah, we'll be back in this department to adjust this to accommodate the amount of nitrous we'll be throwing at it.
Made 258 horse and 323 pound-feet.
Well, I know we're climbing. Let's go ahead and hook the nitrous up so we can climb a big jump.
All right, I'm all for it.
Not a bad idea. For every 50 horse of nitrous, you want to pull a degree of timing out. We're hitting this thing with 100 shot, so that means we need to knock out 2 degrees of timing. All right, cousin, don't forget that boogie button.
Give her the purge, man.
Didn't sound too bad.
It sounded good, though.
I would consider that a success.
Oh, yeah.
It made 326.99 for power at the wheel now, and torque is at 402.81.
Man, that's awesome.
Heck yeah.
That is awesome.
Now, that's with a little one, though. So we can go up from here.
Oh, no, now you have to go up from here. Now you know that it all works. Now you got to go up.
I'm going to get 50 more and put in it.
Nothing comes squirting out. Took it like a champ. You can tell when that nitrous came in, you know, that soft ramping was pretty cool.
Oh, yeah. I could tell too, but not even looking at or hearing the engine, but with your smile, it worked.
Oh my goodness.
There's a long air clear stud in there.
You're all giddy. That's what it is.
I just want to put them bigger pills in there.
All right, make her happen.
Dropping in the new jets just takes a little wrenching here on the front and rear of the plate. It's an easy task, and don't forget to tweak your timing for that bigger hit.
All right, I got the little bit bigger pills in it. You're going to get in there and try it out.
Let's see what's up.
It keeps going up.
Yeah.
341 and 438.
Well, I'm going to call it a win. I wouldn't say it's like a win at the track, but it's definitely a win for what we've done in Cool Factor.
This is success right here. Now you guys, you got it going on. I'm very I'm very impressed. Everything's still going. Now, you know, you had like over 110 mile an hour wheel speed right there.
That's hauling.
Yes.
This engine,
a lot of it too.
Yeah,
I'll tell you what,
coffins.
this particular engine, I'm sure, has never seen any sort of RPM like that in its entire life, you know, and let alone making that kind of power. If this thing was actually, you know, what it's rated for, 190 or whatever,
yeah.
and now you're making, you know, 340s at the tire.
Yeah, so we've doubled it, essentially.
No, that's huge. That's huge.
We've doubled it.
That is 100% a win. All right, the next step is to what?
Racetrack.
Racetrack.
And you know, if we absolutely like disintegrate this thing, you may have to cut your teeth on some Cadillac.
Well, you know, I may or may not have worked on one of these before, so if something needs to be done to it, I think we can help you out. So.
Well, we're gonna let this thing cool down, get it off the dyno, and go have
We're
some
gonna go
fun.
put the hood on it and see if we can't ride around and terrorize the neighborhood.
I think you're all right. Nice job, guys. Nice job.
Thank you, Pat.
If we can't disturb the peace, perhaps we can dig up some creeper peepers at the track. How this behemoth does on the 8th mile, next on Detroit Muscle. You know, Daniel, I'm pretty proud of the way this hearse turned out, and I'm excited to see how all of our hard work and upgrades pay off. Are you even listening to me? You've been pretty quiet today. It's kind of like I'm talking to a previous passenger. Wake up, Sleeping Beauty.
I'm up.
How was the ride?
Well, it ain't built for comfort. The last time I'm letting you talk me into riding back there down here.
Man. Well, we're back here at the drag strip trying to redeem ourselves, but either way, I think we still succeeded. We've changed the personality drastically on this old hearse, plus we've doubled the power output. You want to flip for who gets to drive first?
Yeah, absolutely. Hang on. Ooh, found a quarter back here in the back.
Get out of the way.
What? Hey, I thought we was flipping for it.
Yeah, you lost. We're lucky to have Etheridge Motorsports Park right down the road from us. It's got everything you want. Fast cars, cool pits, and that intoxicating aroma. Burning rubber. Now, before we head down the track, let's talk about our goals with this thing. We wanted it to be a head turner, and as we're cruising it around through the pits, I believe we got exactly the reaction we were looking for.
It's pretty neat. I like it.
I mean, I ain't never seen a hearse like it.
I like what I call the lake pipes on the side of the car running underneath the side of it. I love that.
We were even able to grab the attention of a veteran racer who has spent a lot of his life on a racetrack. He's got a stunning door slammer with what some would call an unlucky number on the windshield.
1313, I was born on the 13th, on Friday the 13th, and the 13th's my lucky number. It's a 55 Chevrolet, it's fiberglass, it's got a Shaprock 565 engine with 1,040 horsepower, and it runs like 560s.
We know this thing won't be that fast. This old hearse won't run anywhere near that. But we did bring this thing here to stretch its legs out on the pavement. Kidding? My face is kind of hurting.
Yeah, is that from the G-forces on launch?
No, not exactly. It's more of the smiles that I got from driving this big goofy car.
Man, that's awesome.
But man, I will say I didn't run the Nitrous. I figured, you know, you got to crawl before you walk, and you're taller than me, so you should be able to have a longer stride, so maybe we'll cover ground a little better. So. But
yeah,
have your way with it.
I'm planning to. Thank you very much.
You go right ahead, big guy. Just keep it in drive. No need to holding it second.
Yeah?
But if you have a helmet for your smile, you might try that on, because this thing is epic.
That's awesome.
one of them Austin power turns. It's a long wheelbase Cadillac. So what do you think about it?
How about that, sports fans?
Dude, I tell you, you look a lot better than I did out there.
I had the boogie button on though.
Yeah, Nitrous definitely helped. Now with this old car, guys, we aren't the fastest by any means. We set the bar pretty high, but you know, sometimes you gotta set goals and try to achieve them. So, man, I have to say, I think we knocked it out of the park.
Yeah, you know what this means, don't you?
What's that?
This means that we are now world record holders. We have the world's fastest 1976 Cadillac Hearse in black paint with twice pipes down the sides and 150 shot, powered by a 500 Cadillac. Yeah.
I think you're right. Let's go
Let's go
celebrate
get a
with it.
cheeseburger.
Man, yeah.
If you'd like to take a look back at this build, hit up PowerNationTV.com and check out the build page for Overtaker.